I think thinking back 10 years ago, I was still trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hell, I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure it
I
out
still
today.
am. I still am to a large degree.
Yeah.
I have better like mentors and advisors and folks on the team that uncover blind spots and stuff. And back then, I really didn't. And so maybe that's the difference is that the people that are supporting us and are helping us along are super high quality. Because owning a business is a little bit different. And so it's good to surround yourself sometimes with people who are in that situation or have those aspirations because they have different challenges, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think if you can't get above it to a certain extent, you can't see things coming. And so when you're in it, working it, things come and you're just reacting to like, what's the thing of the day? Right.
Yeah, getting above it is a fantastic, like getting that altitude. And sometimes I need to get altitude when there's a big problem and, like you just said, Brent, like reacting to it versus how can I step back, look at this thing from the top, from 10,000 feet up, and maybe talk to someone else who has had a similar issue. Because it's kind of like that. I think of that. You ever see that cartoon of the people touching the elephant? Like a bunch of blind people are touching an elephant and they all think that they're touching the whole elephant, right? Because that's all that they can feel. And so I
Yeah.
think of it like touching an elephant. Like I'm looking at it from this perspective, and someone like you may have solved the same issue or had a similar issue from a different perspective. Or maybe you have the benefit of hindsight, having already made a similar decision or been through like a leadership issue, and you have the benefit of hindsight. Like, well, I thought it was going to go this way, and actually it went this other way. Here's what I learned. I think
Yeah.
that's really valuable.
Yeah. And I
How
think,
do you how did you get to that altitude? What's the first step for you, and what was that to get to that altitude?
For me, I think the first step to getting to the altitude was realizing that that was even like an option, right? And slowing down the reaction time and knowing when the answer is like maybe someone brings me an issue and the answer is, hey, we need to circle back on this, or we need to get other people's buy-in on this, or we need to get other people to weigh in, or this actually is part of a bigger issue that we need to talk to other folks on the team about, and not just like making decisions on the fly all the time because maybe there's some fake urgency there.
yeah.
Like, oh, we need to get this done like right now. Like, do we? Or is this like this sometimes it's even like a next year thing,
Yeah.
right? Where we really don't even make a decision on this for 6 months or 8 months or 9 months or whatever. I understand that, because of the way it was presented, there may seem like there's some urgency behind it, but is it real urgency? Is there a real concrete deadline on this? And I find with people issues and leadership issues and sometimes strategic issues, it's better to just take a step back for a little bit and try and get that altitude. And sometimes I'll call Brent or I'll call, someone else on the team to get their perspective and just, hey, here's this issue. What are your thoughts? And that's how I get altitude in those decisions. How about you, Brent?
You mentioned, well, I mean, you mentioned talking to your team, and I think that's kind of the first step, right? It's there's a difference between having a bunch of people doing work and having a united team acting as a united front, and then and all the trust that goes into being able to open yourself up, be vulnerable to asking questions as a leader to your team, and them knowing that they can give you an honest response. And I think that's kind of some of the stuff that takes time. Yeah, you can react and solve a problem today. I think a lot of people, we're men, right? We want to solve problems. It's our natural instinct to just fix things. But to really grow a team that can manage itself and grow and thrive, you first have to grow trust and expectations and accountabilities, and you have to define what you are going to be as an organization, right? And that doesn't just come out of a memo. That comes out of action. That comes out of communicating with your team, top to bottom. That comes from your hiring process, your interviewing process. Uh, it comes from how you present yourself in public. Like people need to know what you're about before they can act how they need to and then thrive. So for us, that was the biggest thing.
I really love this conversation. I really want to frame it really quickly. So, both of you are growing and leading wonderful teams. Zach, you were saying about 100 headcount for you,
Yeah.
and Brent, what are you at?
As many as you need.
Here, I revised my answer. I think
There we
whatever
go.
makes people think that there's capacity, that's what we're
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where we're at. You know, one of the
Okay.
things that you said, Brent, you're totally right. And for me, that's been probably where my biggest learning opportunities have been over the last few years. I think that I really like working solo, and I like kind of working in solitude sometimes and just kind of getting stuff done and being in my own little world. And I think that served me for a little bit. And when it comes to working with a team, like I had to learn and relearn, and I'm still relearning probably in some areas, how to work as not only as a team leader, just as part of a team. Right. And so that's something that is definitely not taught as working as a leader or as a team member in the professional context. Like, what does that even mean? And so for me, it's been an area of a lot of learning, and I made a lot of mistakes, in that area. And so I'm always looking for improvements there.
What are some of those mistakes that you've run into?
Under communicating, probably not sharing my point of view fast enough.
Yeah. What about for you, Brent? What are some of what was difficult for you as a leader?
I think appropriate conflict, if that's even a word. I would, early in my career, I was hard driving, right? This is how we're going to do it. This is how it has to be. This is the right way to do it. And I think a lot of that was good, right? It's like half of the job is giving a damn, you know?
Mhm.
And so, I was real, and that came across wrong. It was how I communicated it. And then other times, as you, over the years, you work with people, you establish a good close bond with them, and you really work to delegate or, give responsibility and let people do their jobs, but you avoid conflict, because, I'd see something, but I didn't know how to articulate that, hey, I didn't have the means to have that conversation other than just lashing out and saying, what the hell are you doing? That kind of thing. Those were mistakes I made. And so people would avoid communication with me. I would avoid that because I didn't have a structure to do it. Like I didn't have a foundation within the company that, hey, this is our culture. This is how we work through things. And that took time. And only I feel like in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, I've gotten so much better at that. But early on, I made a lot of mistakes and rubbed people the wrong way. And, only once I started working with other people within our company as an owner of the company, I would be able to build rapport with them and find out that, man, they would avoid me, because they call me Bruiser Broussard, right? Because I was so intense. And
Yeah, that's definitely a negative. A negative is like you want feedback, and also if you can't, like it can be. And I totally see where people are coming from. Sometimes you get feedback, and it's not like the truth, and sometimes you're like, wow, it's not really like this isn't as bad as I feel like the truth is a little bit worse, and you really want the truth on stuff. And if you've demonstrated in the past that you don't like when people bring you bad feedback, or you attack or negative towards that person for bringing the feedback, of course people are going to bring it to you,
yeah,
right? And so it sounds so obvious to me now. One of the things that I read recently was about this concept called the microscopic truth. And so, like, to tell the microscopic truth as often as you can, which is sharing your point of view as often as you can. And if you tell and it's the microscopic truth, if there's no arguing about it. Once you give feedback or whatever, if there's argument about it, then it might not be the truth. It might be emotions or it might be biased or whatever. And so I thought that was an interesting way to think about, feedback is just how can I give feedback in a way that the other person like takes that feedback and there's no argument about like what the truth is.